Chasing $1 million is a mistake. Most people call it the ultimate goal, but your life doesn't actually change once you reach that number. The real changes happen at three specific levels: $10,000, $100,000, and $500,000. These are the points where math and your mindset start to matter more than just your physical work. Most people fail because they focus on the final goal instead of finishing these first three steps. In this video, I'm going to explain the actual facts about building wealth so you can stop focusing on the wrong things and start seeing real progress. Before we look at the numbers, I have a question. Which city are you watching from? And what is the biggest financial problem stopping you from reaching your next goal? Let us begin with the first milestone, $10,000. On the surface, this number seems insignificant. In a world of billionaire headlines, $10,000 feels like a rounding error, but for the visionaries, this is the combat zone. This is the milestone that proves you possess the discipline to override your primal urges. Reaching this mark is an act of defiance against a consumerist machine designed to keep you at a net worth of zero. The math of the first 10,000 is purposely discouraging. Let us look at the cold data. If you invest $100 every month into a standard index fund or a diversified portfolio, earning an average return of 8%, it will take you precisely 6.5 years to hit $10,000. Here is the part that causes the average person to quit. During those 6.5 years, you will have contributed $7,800 of your own blood, sweat, and labor. The fabled power of compound interest will have only contributed $2,200. The average person looks at these numbers and feels cheated. They see that 78% of the progress came from their own sacrifice, while the market only gave them a small nudge. They tell themselves that the game is rigged or that compounding is a myth for the ultra-wealthy. They would rather spend that $10,000 on a depreciating asset like a car or a vacation because the immediate dopamine hit feels more real than the slow grind of capital. But the 1% understands the law of the initial spark. You do not judge a fire by its first flicker, you judge it by the potential energy it represents. When you hit $10,000, you have officially transitioned from a pure laborer to a fledgling owner. If you were to stop contributing entirely at this point, that $10,000 would grow by $6,591 in the next 6.5 years without you lifting a finger. That is $1,000 of passive annual growth, money that was earned while you slept, traveled, or spent time with your family. Over 25 years, that original spark grows into nearly $70,000. All because you had the fortitude to survive the first 6 years of friction. The true value of $10,000 is not economic, it is psychological sovereignty. Most people exist in a state of low-level chronic financial tremors. They are one engine failure or one medical bill away from total collapse. This constant state of survival thins the prefrontal cortex and makes it impossible to think strategically. $10,000 is your first suit of armor. It covers 99% of life's unforeseen strikes. When you have 5 figures in liquid capital, you no longer beg for opportunities, you evaluate them. You gain the power to say no to a toxic boss or a bad deal. This is where the mental barrier is shattered. You have proven that the system cannot break your discipline. You have moved from the struggle of the many to the momentum of the few. This brings us to the second milestone, $100,000. This is where the physics of money begins to warp. If the first 10,000 was about surviving the storm, the first 100,000 is about reaching escape velocity. In the beginning, your wealth is a direct result of your physical exertion. But at $100,000, your capital begins to take on a life of its own. Consider this. A 10% return on $100 earns you $10, the price of a cheap meal. But a 10% return on $100,000 earns you $10,000. For most people, $10,000 is not something they can earn in an hour or even a week of labor. Yet at this milestone, your money generates a sum that rivals a significant portion of the average annual salary simply by existing. This is the manifestation of the elite principle. Capital scales, but labor does not. You cannot work 10,000 times harder than your neighbor, but you can easily own 10,000 times more capital. This is why the first 100,000 is the hardest thing you will ever do. It is like pushing a massive freight train. At the start, you are straining every muscle just to move it a single inch. The friction is immense, but once the train is moving, inertia becomes your ally. The data proves this acceleration is exponential. If you invest $10,000 annually at a 7% return, reaching your first 100,000 will take you 7.84 years. However, reaching the second 100,000 will only take 5.1 years. The journey from 900,000 to 1 million? That takes a mere 1.35 years. The final 100,000 is nearly 6 times faster than the first. Most people fail because they judge the entire journey by the difficulty of the first mile. They look at their progress after 2 years and see nothing but a tiny pile of cash and a lot of missed parties. They do not realize that personal finance is a game of delayed feedback. Think of the difference between a high-speed projectile and a heavy boulder. If you strike a projectile, you see the result instantly. But if you are building an empire, the results are buried under years of foundation work. You are 35 years old with $100,000 in investments, and you feel behind because your peers are posting pictures of leased luxury cars. What the average person doesn't see is that if you never add another cent, that 100,000 will balloon into $1 million by the time you hit 65. Over 90% of that final million will be pure growth, not your labor. You are not behind. You are simply operating on a different timeline than the masses. Are you a builder who understands the silent power of compounding, or are you a consumer who needs instant gratification to feel successful? Tell me which side of the line you stand on in the comments. To reach this 100,000 mark faster, you must weaponize every tool available in the global financial system. Do not treat employer matches as a mere perk. Treat them as a tactical accelerant. In the United States, the 401k match is effectively a 100% return on your investment before the money even hits the market. If you contribute $500 and your employer matches it, you have doubled your capital instantly. Whether you are using the superannuation system in Australia, the RRSP in Canada, or the pension schemes in the United Kingdom, these are the mechanisms the elite use to bypass the friction of the early years. Furthermore, you must ruthlessly increase your income during this phase. This is not about comfort, it is about fuel. Whether it is acquiring high-value certifications that make you indispensable or launching a side venture that brings in an extra $100 a week, every additional dollar you inject into your portfolio at this stage acts as a catalyst. $100 today is worth $1,000 in the future fortress you are building. Do not trade your future sovereignty for temporary luxuries. This leads us to the third milestone, the one that most people never even contemplate: $500,000. This is the inflection point. This is where the portfolio stops being a collection of assets and starts becoming an automated city. At $500,000, the sheer mass of your capital creates its own weather system. At a modest 8% return, your money is now generating $40,000 per year. In many parts of the developed world, this is a full-time living wage. You have reached a point where your money earns more than a human being working 40 hours a week at a median job. You have effectively cloned yourself. You now have a digital version of you that works 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with no need for rest, food, or motivation. At this level, you have moved beyond the need for social safety nets. In the United States, the average retirement balance is roughly $491,000. By hitting the 500,000 mark, you have already surpassed the average person's lifetime of effort. Using a conservative withdrawal rate of 4.7%, this nest egg provides $23,500 a year. When combined with average Social Security benefits, a household at the age of 67 could see an annual income of over $73,000. But for the visionaries, $500,000 is not about retirement, it is about optionality. This is the birth of what we call CoastFIRE. At this milestone, you have achieved a level of mathematical certainty that your future is secure. Even if you never contribute another dollar, your $500,000 will likely double to $1 million in 10 years, and exceed 2.3 million in 20 years. This realization changes the very nature of your existence. You no longer work because you have to, you work because you choose to. You can quit the high-stress corporate ladder and take a lower-paying role that aligns with your passions. You can take 6 months off to travel the world or launch a dream project, knowing that your automated city is still growing in the background. $500,000 is the price of total psychological liberation. It is the moment you realize that the golden cage is open and you have the key. The journey to 500,000 requires no new secrets. There is no magic formula hidden in a premium masterclass. It is simply the relentless extension of the discipline you learned at $10,000. It is the refusal to let lifestyle inflation bleed your progress. The 1% are not smarter than the crowd. They are simply more patient. They understand that the only thing standing between them and a life of absolute freedom is the passage of time and the preservation of their capital. We have explored the architecture of wealth, but there is a deeper truth that most people ignore until it is too late. For those of you still watching, those of you who have the hunger to actually execute this plan, here is the final brutal reality. The greatest tax you will ever pay is not to the government, it is the tax of hesitation. Every year you wait to start the grind toward that first $10,000 is a year you are stealing from your future self at the $500,000 mark. The cost of a $500 mistake when you are 25 is not $500. It is the $50,000 that money would have become. The elite do not count what things cost today. They count what they cost in lost future freedom. If you have felt the weight of this truth today, if you are ready to stop being a victim of the system and start being a builder of your own destiny, comment the words "I am awake" below. The path to financial sovereignty is not a straight line. It is a curve that starts in the mud and ends in the clouds. Most people quit while they are still in the mud. They see the effort, but they cannot imagine the view from the top. But you are different. You are here because you recognize that wealth is not about buying things. It is about buying your life back. It is time to take the next step. If you found this analysis sharp and you are ready to dive deeper into how your net worth fundamentally explodes, once you cross the $100,000 threshold, you need to watch our specialized breakdown on that specific phenomenon. The math is undeniable and the strategy is waiting for you. To show your commitment to the 1%, like this video and subscribe. This is not just a channel, it is a gathering of those who seek more than a mediocre existence. Join the visionaries. Your future self is waiting. Click the video on the screen now to continue your education. Stay focused, stay disciplined. We will see you in the next one.